I kind of went into Medtrade thinking like, oh, everyone's going to be talking about competitive bidding and everyone's going to be talking about this new moratorium on the new Medicare enrollments for DME post suppliers. The payer environment to me was like the big thing that people are talking about and are concerned about.
When you're deciding what stories to cover with HME News, what's like something that makes it worthwhile or worth telling the story?
Whenever providers come to us with a concern or like a challenge, we love to write about providers because that's who our readers are, and they like to read about their peers, right? And what their peers are doing, or they want acknowledgement that they're not the only ones that are struggling with this issue.
So after, 2 decades of reporting on this space, you've probably seen just about every trend, business model come and go. When you look back at this from a high level, what's going to change the most over the years?
I would say technology is the biggest thing that I think has changed over, the past 10 years. It used to be the big thing would be like, oh, should I outsource part of my business? Like that was like the big thing. We didn't have like what we've had in the past couple of years with all the new software players and all the other technology companies that have come in the industry.
All right, we are live with the #1 DME podcast, claim to fame. Today we have a very special guest, Liz Beaulieu from HME News. So excited to have you today. Welcome to the show, Liz.
Thanks for having me. And I thought you were going to say the #1 DME publication, but you said the #1 DME.
I didn't get there yet.
We'll let you have that title. And Alex didn't butcher your last name, so we're off to a great start.
Yeah, before we started recording, we started talking about how Liz's last name is French. And I'd actually prefer if you could pronounce it the way it should be pronounced.
Beaulieu, which
For
means
those who don't know, there it is.
place in French. Yeah.
Amazing. And like I was saying before, it kind of is in line with our French Chateau theme for our Medtrade booth. So love it. We're all on brand today. So Liz, for anyone who doesn't know you, and if for whatever reason anyone doesn't know what HME News is, please feel free to give us a little background on yourself and what your company does.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Liz Beaulieu, which would be the main pronunciation. And I'm the editor of HME News. And it feels antiquated to say, but I still say we're a business newspaper that covers the home medical equipment industry. Of course, we still do have a print issue, which we're proud of every month, but we're much more than that. We have a website that we update daily. We have email newsletters that go out a couple of times a week. And, basically, our goal is to report on everything that's going on in the home medical equipment industry, which, as the two of you know, there's never a lack of things to report on and cover, and it's more an issue of triaging between myself and my managing editor, Teresa Flaherty. We're two people. We write, 98% of what appears in the publication, on the website, in the newsletter. So we're definitely on the go a lot.
That's awesome, Liz. And, you've been the editor of HME News for more than 21 years, correct me if I'm wrong, which means you basically came straight out of college and been in the DME industry since and covering it, which is a really unique insight. So after, 2 decades of reporting on this space, you've probably seen just about every trend, regulation, business model come and go. When you look back at this from a high level, what's going to change the most over the years?
Yeah, I would like to clarify that I have not been covering the HME industry that whole time, but you are right. I did graduate from journalism school, worked at a local newspaper for like a year and a half, but have been working for what we call trade publications ever since then. So I have been with
HME News.
Well, it's complicated. I was working for HME. I was working for a different publication at the same company for a little bit that covered the call center news. Again, these weird little niche trade pubs, right? And this was before the .com bust, when we had like IT support news and all these different. So anyway, I worked for one of those publications for like a year, and then moved over to HME News and worked under two people that people who've been in the industry for a while will know, Jim Sullivan and Mike Moran, and they were running HME News for a really long time, worked under them, learned everything I knew working under them. And then I left for grad school for 2 years and then came right back and started working for HME News again. So I think this latest stint would probably like over 10 years. So it has been a while.
That's awesome.
Wayne.
You know, people can't
Yeah.
stay away from DME is a common theme on a lot of the episodes. So
Yeah.
know, it
Yourself
becomes
included,
near and dear
Wayne.
to- yeah, same. I've been doing this for almost 10 years. It just kind of becomes like it's a niche and you get a lot of like specific knowledge and there's a lot of great people. So people seem to stay for the long haul. And a lot of our conversations with DMEs are, you know, family owned businesses that literally started in the garage and, you know, now they're multi-generational. So makes sense to
Yeah.
come back.
Yeah, but you asked about sort of like the changes that I've seen in the industry, and it's funny. It's almost like I would flip that question on its. We can talk about like technology. I'm sure we'll talk about that and all the changes we've seen there. But what's kind of interesting to me is like what hasn't changed. You know, like one of the biggest topics of conversation these days is, you know, the return of competitive bidding, and that's something that we've been kind of, you know, writing about on and off for over 10, well, yeah, over 10 years now, I guess. So in some ways, like with technology, things are way different, but in other ways, things are kind of still the same. But I would say technology is the biggest thing that I think has changed over, you know, the past 10 years. I was talking to someone at Medtrade about this and saying, you know, it used to be the big thing would be like, oh, should I outsource part of my business? Like that was like the big thing, right? Everyone ran the
Yep.
same software. Everyone was kind of doing the same thing. And that was like the big trend was like it still is a trend, obviously, outsourcing part of your business. But that we didn't have like what we've had in the past couple of years with all, you know, the new software players and all the other technology companies that have come in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, as the editor of HME News, you talk to people across the entire industry, and I know we're talking about some themes, but are there themes that you're seeing right now that are occurring over and over again as you're talking to all the people in the space?
Yeah, and this kind of dovetails with what I was hearing at Medtrade. You know, I kind of went into Medtrade thinking like, oh, everyone's going to be talking about competitive bidding and everyone's going to be talking about this new moratorium on the new Medicare enrollments for DME post suppliers. And people were talking about those things, and obviously some of the sessions were focused on those things, and people had really technical, you know, logistical questions about what it means and what they can and can't do and all that. But the payer environment to me was like the big thing that people are, you know, we're talking about and are concerned about. You know, one of the most read stories that we wrote recently was about Blue Cross Blue Shield's decision to partner with CareCentrix to manage their DME benefit. That's a big change, you know, in that state, but that's just like a microcosm of what's going on everywhere, right? You know, this is also happening in Oregon, and then there are other companies like CareCentrix, like Molina, who are doing similar things in other states. So I would say like different things happening in the payer world are the things we're hearing about and writing about the most right now. That seems to be the biggest deal.
Liz, would you say that is unique to this year or similar to the years in the past, this concept of these changes with these payers?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's unique to it's been amplified, I guess, in the past couple of years. You know, when you probably remember even 10 years ago, you know, the industry was like, you know, maybe a little bit before that, but like 80% Medicare and 20% like other payers. And now it's like, you know, I don't have the stats in front of me, but it's more like a 60-40 situation or even 50-50 situation, right? We also have this huge, you know, upturn in Medicare Advantage, and at least 50% of Medicare beneficiaries are covered by Medicare Advantage plans now instead of traditional Medicare. So I think the payer landscape is just way more complicated, where before it was like, oh, it's either Medicare fee for service or it's a cash sale or something, you know what I mean? Now you can have, you have traditional Medicare, you have Medicare Advantage, you have managed care companies running Medicaid programs, you have all the commercial insurers, you know what I mean? It's like way more complex. So I think that different setup kind of makes it something that providers just naturally have to, deal with.
Absolutely. Yep. It's DME is always ever changing. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So switching gears, going back to Medtrade, I'm curious, in terms of like your takeaways this year from this event, what would you say was like common takeaways, your takeaways that you experienced while on the floor?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously there was a big presence by tech companies at the show, yourselves included. You know, Alex, we talked about how your booth was not only snazzier this year, but like bigger than it has been in the past. I think that was true for a number of kind of tech focused companies. So, you know, that's something I think that's been building quite a bit in the past year or so. So it was interesting to see that, you know, get amplified again. You know, from the attendees that I talked to, I think maybe last year and the year before that, it was more like overwhelming and like, wow, there's all these new tools now, and like, you know, just overwhelmed by it. And I think this year, I think at least for the provider attendees, and I don't know if you experienced this at your booth, but having those provider attendees really drill down more into, you know, the specifics of what these technologies can do for them. Like, you know, I had one provider, you know, say to me like, this is all great, but like, you know, if I do things this way, will I pass an audit? You know, the whole compliance aspect of using some of this, you know, AI and automation and some of these tools out there. And also, like, who's it good for? Like, is this really good for my business, or does this make the life of my referral source easier? Like, who is this, you know, great for? So, like, last year might have been like, you know, more exploratory and like overwhelm, and then this year I feel like they were more drilling into like the specifics of, you know, what some of these technologies can do for them. But does that like reflect some of the conversations you had in your booth?
I would say, yeah, I definitely agree with you. Like, even, you know, from our perspective, even though we're newer, we've been around for a bit. So I've seen a lot of these things firsthand where it's like, hey, in the last 24 months, a lot of new and exciting companies have popped up. And then this year it's like, okay, we understand the landscape. Let's talk about, you know, who's who and who does what, basically. Like, most people that are at Medtrade now know that we exist, but they're coming with specific questions of maybe where other solutions are falling short, or unique requirements, or they definitely know what they're looking for now and understand the options are out there. So I definitely see the same thing. You know, it used to be, who was Nico Health? What do you guys do? What kind of software you are? Now it's like, we know who you are. We know what kind of software you are. Can you solve these type of, you know, pain points in our business? So I definitely have seen the same thing over the years. And, you know, there's definitely been I don't want to say resurgence, but, you know, there's been a lot of new companies, right? So Medtrade, you know, I think is a little bit more, it's always been exciting to me, but I think people are now open to looking at all different types of new software, and Medtrade's definitely the place to go to actually meet the people behind these companies. So this was our best one yet. I think they're only going to get better and better. And, you know, I think everyone's getting more tech savvy. So short
Yeah.
answer, yeah, definitely seeing the same things.
Yeah, I think the Medtrade said like 116 exhibitors were new to the show this year
Wow.
out of like over 360. So that's like a pretty good percentage of
Oh yeah,
new
I had no
companies.
idea.
Yeah. And
I mean, it's
that's not just like, you know, obviously it's not just tech companies. Like, you know, I was in the booth with, I don't know if this company Upriser, which is out of the Netherlands, and they make like a vertical height adjustable toilet seat, right? Not like
right.
earth shattering. I mean, but in terms of like the actual product, but you know, it has that like Scandinavian, you know, look to it. It's
Yeah.
something that you wouldn't mind having in your house kind of thing. You know what I mean? And apparently the company that makes this has been making like standing desks and stuff, you
Interesting.
know,
Oh, okay.
for a long time, and have applied those principles to this. So, I mean, even in like, you know, everyone talks about technology, but there's a lot going on, you know, on the like more durable medical equipment side of the industry as well. This other company, Monarch Mobility, I think they're out of the UK, and they're setting up shop in Texas. And they've got this like a portable car lift. It's something that you actually like, you can install in the back of your car to like lift up a scooter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So things like that happening. I talked with two guys who were walking the show floor who were kind of trying to determine if there's a, if there's a market for like colorful DME. This guy used to be like a t-shirt designer for Paul Frank, and so he like
Oh, I
he
met that
showed
guy.
me. Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, he came to our booth.
Yeah,
I
he
think his name
definitely
was
made
Ben,
the rounds.
or Benny,
Yeah.
or something like that. Yeah, he was
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was helpful. He said he's got all these like kind of designer people and these
Yeah.
creative people that can, I guess offer some opinions or offer some strategy. I was actually curious, what types of companies or products seem to generate the most buzz in your opinion on the floor?
I'd say it's still like all the tech related companies. So anything from like software to, I would say definitely the technology companies still. For a couple years running now, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a series of different, let's say AI companies come onto the show, right? And they all more or less kind of do something in a similar vein with, automating a lot of the processes that the DME companies were doing previously in a manual way. And it kind of seems to me that it's obviously coming to a head where there's going to be a lot of different AI companies doing a lot of something similar, and there's going to be an emergence down the road where someone's got to kind of win the battle. So it's going to be interesting to see how the whole thing kind of shakes out.
Yeah, I definitely, I definitely got, I got that vibe from people, at Medtrade too, that, with this, you know, increasing number of, players in that space, it's only natural for that to consolidate in some way, right? And I think if you were at the business summit in October in Cleveland, you heard that from the investors panel that we had, investors from different tech companies in the industry. At some point we have a lot of different point solutions, and at some point, it's going to consolidate in some way, either to your point, Alex, like, one or two of these companies is going to like float to the top, or, some of these companies will get incorporated into existing platforms to offer more of like a package kind of situation. Curious to know, how you guys see that shaking out too. It's definitely something that's in the back of my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I get asked all the time, like, who's the best? I'm not gonna say that on the podcast, but I do think, companies will, with the AI, they'll definitely find their own niches. Like, I'm seeing certain ones carve out different feature sets where some are more out of the box, plug and play, if you will, where some are more totally tailored bespoke solutions for like unique workflow. So I think they'll start to find their way, but I've also been doing DME software for a long time, and Nico Health definitely does not have as many competitors as we used to when we first started doing this. There was probably 10 plus companies to choose from. In my opinion, there's only 2 now, and one is us. So I've seen that happen firsthand, but those are my general thoughts. And to be honest, the AI companies are all doing amazing work. They're all trying to solve like very long-standing, difficult problems in in DME, and I think they'll carve out their own niche in these different use cases. Is my thought process, but they're all definitely passionate and trying to solve problems that in a cash constrained like business model where you're only getting paid from the payer pretty much as your main payer source, and you can't tell them to pay you more when we try. Obviously, like, people advocate to get paid more, but you can't say, hey, pay me more. You can't just raise your price like a typical business. So you have to find ways to cut costs and be more efficient. So I think the next like 5 years with all of it will be pretty incredible to see what happens, and hopefully benefit the provider and the patients at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point about the Nico Health story too is an interesting one, because the software landscape for HME providers was pretty well entrenched with like established players. And, you all have been able to come in and kind of like, make room for yourselves in the market. So I think I hadn't thought about that, but that's an interesting story,
Hey,
between
Feel free to write about it.
Nah,
You guys
it's
got the
almost,
teaser here today.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's almost the reverse of what's happening with all these AI companies, right? Because there's like all these new companies, and I feel like the established companies maybe have been slow to incorporate some of this stuff. So you've had all these new companies come in, kind of flood, but the software market was a little different. It was a small handful of entrenched companies, and to have like a newcomer come in is kind of, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Speaking of stories, I was curious, when you're deciding, what stories to cover with HME News, what's something that makes it worthwhile or worth telling the story, or what's newsworthy to you?
Yeah, well, whenever we hear from we write for the HME provider, right? So there's this saying at HME News that goes back like decades. What's in it for Mario? And Mario is this, I don't think he's in the industry anymore, Mario LaCute, but he used to be like a regional provider. So that was something that was instilled in us. Whenever you're thinking about writing a story, you're writing a story, what's in it for Mario? What's in it for the provider, right? So I think whenever like providers come to us with a concern or like a challenge or, something exciting they're doing with their business, like that's almost always a story. Like we love to write about providers, and because that's who our readers are, and they like to read about their peers, right? And what their peers are doing, or they want acknowledgement that they're not the only ones that are struggling with this issue. So that's a big one. From the vendor manufacturer side, like we don't typically write stories about new products because we would just be writing that all day long, every day. Yep. So for us, that there needs to be like, if manufacturer is getting into a new product category, like for instance, Inogen, right? Known as a portable oxygen concentrator company. When they release the CPAP mask line, like that's news. They're getting in a totally different, market. It's part of this pitch they're playing to be more of a comprehensive respiratory, player. So, that's what makes it a story. But, it really gets down to like Teresa and I kind of using our editorial judgment. Like we've been both covering this industry for a really long time, but I would say like whatever the providers are talking about, asking us about, sharing with us, that kind of like floats things to the top for sure.
Liz, is there one that kind of jumps out to you, like a story you've covered recently that has stuck with you?
Well, I mean, I did look before getting on this call, I did look at what our most read stories for the year have been so far. Any guesses?
Ooh, is it something related to competitive bid? I know that was
probably competitive bid, maybe something around
AI.
It's finally calmed down, but for I don't know, a year, 6 months there, it was like everywhere you turn.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so far this year, the moratorium on those Medicare enrollments has been the big news items. That Blue Cross Blue Shield story I told you about earlier. Drive Medical's acquisition of Compass. That was a huge story. And that one's interesting. Kingswood, the investor that backs Drive Medical, is also closing its deal of Quipt Home Medical. So that's kind of interesting to have an investor kind of have
that
both.
That is definitely interesting.
Yeah, a company on the provider side and also on the manufacturer side. So that's kind of interesting. Also, let's see, SleepRes and their Cricket PAP device. That was, a lot of people were interested in that.
It's good to know because SleepRes actually sent me a Cricket device, and we're going to do an episode where I actually wear it and we talk about it. So
yeah.
Good to know a lot of people are like reading and interested in that. Cool.
Yeah, yeah. And then, let's see, we do talking about story selection, something that's sort of newer. We do follow all the like public companies and listen to their earnings calls. A lot of these companies, like say in Adapt Health, like they're not going to, do an interview, with me, because they're a public company. They can't really say a lot publicly outside of, what they say in the earnings calls. So we do tap into those and write stories based on those because you do get little nuggets of info that you wouldn't get otherwise. So yeah, their recent earnings call, they were talking about their latest big contract. I don't think they named it. I believe it's with Kaiser, but they also have a contract with Humana. So provider readers, are always interested in finding out what, the national providers are doing. So that rounds out most of the top stories so far this year.
Hey, Liz, if we had this conversation again in 5 or 10 years, what do you think would be the biggest headline about the DME industry? Would be.
I'm speechless. That's a good one. If I had that, I'm gonna have to answer one of those answers where you say, like, if I had the answer to that question, I would probably.
You're going to have to plead the fifth, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, we can move on. No worries,
Yeah.
Liz. No worries. I don't want to kill you on the show, so we can move on to the
That's-
I
the
mean,
rapid
that
fires.
was not an easy question. You told her no brain
That-
busters, so
Yeah, exactly. You told me
Sorry.
no trick
We
questions.
we can say Nico Health becomes a publicly traded company.
There you go.
There you go.
Write it down. Put on a post-it. Put on your computer.
I don't.
Okay,
I
cool.
just the non-answer to that question is like I feel like there's so much in flux right now. It's really hard to even predict. Like healthcare in general, like there's just so much going on that I feel like it's kind of hard to predict. It's hard to say.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
You're not wrong. Liz, are you ready for our rapid fire round?
Sure.
Wayne, are you gonna do it?
I can do it. Let me find our list here. These are very easy, right?
Okay.
All right. You ready, Liz? All right. If you had to survive on one snack forever, what would it be?
Granola.
That's a good one. What's the most random thing currently in your purse or bag?
A pair of my daughter's ski socks that I need to bring to
Uh,
Goodwill.
That's definitely random.
That is random.
All right. If you had a warning label, what would it say?
Oh God. Tread lightly. I don't know.
That's a good one. If you have a completely free Saturday with zero responsibilities, what are you doing?
Well, because it's winter, I would say skiing. I love to ski.
Love that.
Love that.
If your personality had a mascot, what animal would it be?
I don't know. Tiger.
That's a good one. And last one, morning person or night owl?
Oh, morning person.
Easy one. We had to give you
That
an
was
easy
an easy
one.
way to end it. Yeah.
Yeah.
End it on an easy note. Liz, thanks so much for joining us today. This has been a lot of fun. If anyone wants to reach out to you or contact you, or if they have a story and they want to run it by you, what's the best way that someone could reach you?
My email address, I would say, editors@hmenews.com.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Well, thanks so much for joining. I would love to do this again. Maybe we could do it at around the HME News Summit. If you want to talk about that real quick and where that will be a good place to plug it.
That would be great. It's in, so speaking of, how do you say, sir, is it Louisville? Louisville? I don't know.
I think it's
I'm gonna have to
Louisville.
learn.
I think if you're from there.
Depends where you're from,
That's
I
where it
think.
is.
It's
Yeah.
not in
October-
France, right?
Yeah. October 12th to the 14th. So a week earlier this year, but it's really cool. It's the Sealback Hilton, which is a really cool venue.
Awesome. We're looking forward to it. All right, perfect. So let's link back there. Liz, thanks so much for joining. We appreciate you, and we'll see you on the other side.
Thanks.
Thanks, Liz.